Today's presentation. Again, my name is Barbara Reynolds, and I'm the project specialist for AmeriCorps State and National. I'm going to kick us off today with some logistical information as well as some framing comments, and then we'll jump into our topic at hand, which is, of course, the member training and orientation. Before we jump into content, I do want to just make a couple of technology announcements, just to make sure that everything is functioning the way we're hoping that it will today. So first of all, on the screen in front of you, you should be seeing a few different things, right? You should see in the middle, the bottom of your page, a little pod that's called Web Links. And in that web links, you have active links to the PowerPoint presentation, the slides that you're going to be looking at today, as well as the evaluation form for this session. So I want to draw your attention to these. You should be able to access these throughout the presentation and really invite you and encourage you to submit an evaluation. It's a very short form that we would love to hear your thoughts on how today's presentation went. So first check just to make sure that you can see the web links. You do see on the screen, and I just want to let you know verbally that we are recording today's presentation, so please, if that is not comfortable for you, please disconnect. We will post the audio recording as well as the visuals on the Knowledge Network later on this month, so I just wanted to show you that and show you the link of where you'll be able to find the recording. And then finally, you should see on the lower left or the left-hand side of your screen the chat box, a chat that will allow you to say words to everyone who's on or to select particular participants. And we will use the chat box during the presentation a couple different times. We're also going to have this chat box open for our staff monitoring behind the scenes, just to keep an eye out if you have questions or comments as we move throughout the entire presentation. So if you could please, let's go ahead and test this chat feature. I want to make sure that you're seeing it and that you're able to access it before we jump into our content. If you could please just type a quick howdy, how's it going, what's up from Idaho, wherever, just to let us know. I see a bunch of folks typing in there, a couple of hellos, hi's, and hola, thank you. Thank you very much. Yep, that's incredibly helpful. Yep, keep that coming. This is the webinar equivalent of going around the room and introducing ourselves. So I'd love to see a greeting from everyone who's logged in right now. And it looks to me like at a quick glance, you are hearing my voice and you're able to use your chat feature, which is terrific. That is what we definitely wanted to confirm. All right, thank you. Yes, ahoy. I like an ahoy. That's a very summer greeting. All right, thank you. So just to give a little context for today's session before we jump into our particular topic, today's presentation is one in a series, right, of webinars that our state and national unit provide over the course of the year, of this particular year. In general, what we're hoping to do with each of these webinars is to focus on a core piece of management or core piece of our AmeriCorps business and really help build skills and knowledge with this focus and with this training. We also hope, frankly, that this time that we have together with you today will give you a chance just to take a break, take a step back from the busyness of your program day-to-day or your commission day-to-day. I definitely know, coming from both the commission and the program world, that early August for many of us around the network is a crazy, crazy busy time. So again, I want to thank you for taking time to join today, and also hope, as I said, that this time together will give you a bit of a break from the crush of your work. So as I said, today's presentation is one in the series that we are providing over the course of 2018. You can see on the slide in front of you several other topics. I know just from glancing at the participants list that some of you have logged on for earlier presentations, so nice to see you again, and nice to see you virtually. And in the rest of this year, we do have several other topics that we'll be addressing as well, so hopefully your schedules will allow you to join us. In late September, we're going to look at some grantee progress reporting. Later in the fall, we'll look at data quality monitoring. And then our next session this month is going to focus on member and site monitoring and reporting. So that is what we're doing for 2018. And then just to frame again for some context for the presentation, for each of our webinars, we expect that we will have a combined, a unified audience of our State Service Commission partners, as well as our colleagues in national AmeriCorps programs. Tribal program staff will often log in for these as well. We anticipate that those of us, those on the line with us today, will represent a diverse array of experiences, right? So some of you may have been at your commission or at your program for many years. Some of you may be brand spanking new, and that's wonderful. It's wonderful to have all of us together. It is definitely our intention, and I think our tone when we're looking at our webinar series, that we're starting with the basics, that we're really expecting. We do have a good number of participants on this session, as well as other webinars, folks who are new to this world and are really starting to get their AmeriCorps legs. So a lot of our content will be very introductory, and then we do have some guest speakers later on to share some of the more advanced elements related to member orientation and training. So that's what we're doing today. That is a sense of the audience and the purpose for today's presentation, and it is now my pleasure to turn it over to our presenters, and they will take it away.
Thank you, Barbara, and welcome everybody. We're going to start off just briefly going through today's agenda for the webinar. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kick it off with some introductions, both from our end and your end, virtually. Then we're going to move into some content and talk about AmeriCorps member orientation and training and CNCS requirements. And then we'll move on to member orientation and training at citizen schools and grid alternatives. So we'll have our guests from the field from two national programs, Citizen Schools and Grid Alternatives, who were willing to really share their experience in this area with all of us today. So we very much look forward to that. And then following our guest speakers from the field, then we'll open it up for Q&A. So we will ask everyone to hold their questions, make note of them, and we will open the lines for Q&A following our guest speakers. Unless you would like to ask a question via the chat box, please feel free to do that at any time, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the webinar. And then we'll move into wrap-up and closing remarks.
Hi, everybody. This is Beth Binkley. I am a State National Program Officer, and the person you were just listening to was Tova Pertman. She is also a State National Program Officer. She joined CNCS in September of 2012. Before coming to CNCS, she worked for international nonprofit development organizations for almost 10 years, managing international exchange and youth development programming. Tova is also a returned Peace Corps volunteer. She spent 2 years in the Republic of Moldova, and I'm going to turn it back over to Tova.
Thank you. And the individual you were just listening to is Beth Binkley. And Beth is also a State and National Program Officer, and she joined CNCS in March of 2013. She also oversees works with a diverse portfolio of commissions and program grantees, and contributes to a variety of projects here at CNCS. Beth has also, prior to coming to CNCS, served as State AmeriCorps Director for the South Carolina Commission for National and Community Service, as well as Service Director for City Year Columbia. So now that we've introduced ourselves, we'd like to take a few minutes to find out who is on today's session. So everybody, please, in the chat box, please enter your name, agency, location, relationship with AmeriCorps, and your favorite summer vacation spot that we're all closing our eyes and dreaming about right now. So here's Beth's example. Beth, CNCS, Washington, D.C., AmeriCorps staff member. She wishes she was in Edisto Island.
Where's Edisto Island, Beth?
It's actually Edisto Island, and it's in the great state of South Carolina.
Nice.
All right, so let's see who's with us today. In the conversation box, please go ahead, enter your name, agency, location, AmeriCorps relationship, and favorite summer vacation spot. Oh, we've got representation from Alaska. Serve Alaska. Margie, hello. Oh, and Alaska's her favorite vacation spot. What do you know? Wonderful. Kathy Gattinger, we've got Arkansas Commission represented. Wonderful. We have MEC Math and Reading Corps from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Welcome, welcome. We have Kentucky Ready Corps program. Wonderful, thank you. When I vacation, I am making art at home and my drawing board. Beautiful, beautiful.
I can't believe no one said Baltimore. I'm from Baltimore. Why is Baltimore not a favorite vacation spot? Come on, people.
This is great. This is great. We've got a number of participants here. Thank you for sharing and putting in your information. We have representation from Michigan, the Michigan Community Service Commission, American Youth Works, Conservation Corps. Welcome. Come on, Baltimore from Barbara Reynolds. We've got SBP in the house. Wonderful. Welcome. And she wishes she were in Hawaii. Excellent. Milwaukee Christian Center, Youth Build AmeriCorps. Welcome. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, now we're going to jump into the session. Thank you again for joining us today. Member development is a critical aspect of running a successful AmeriCorps program. A strong development plan, which includes orientation and training, is a key component in driving member service by ensuring the members are fully prepared to carry out the program's activities. So today we're going to discuss the various components of successful member development so that you have the tools you need to create and implement a solid plan for your own program. Spotlight on cycle of program development. You see this handy graph here that we're going to talk about. AmeriCorps program management is represented in this way, the cycle of AmeriCorps program development. The cycle is a general outline for how an AmeriCorps program may create the appropriate structure to help members be successful. This is a general program model. The way that it looks will vary tremendously around the country. For example, tribal programs will design and deliver programs that meet their own community's needs. Multi-state programs will look very different in different parts of the country. State programs will also be tailored to reflect the needs of their respective states and community members. The program development cycle is an ongoing process, and member management tasks occur throughout it. This is also a good way to think about continuous program improvement as you continue to move through your program's own development cycle. So we want to show you a few examples and talk about a few examples of 3 elements of the cycle that particularly relate to member training. So first we have the vision phase up at the top. In this first phase of AmeriCorps program development, programs need to articulate how member service will positively impact the community need or problem the program is addressing. So this includes how programs will train members to address that need or problem through their service activities. Next is the foundation building step in the cycle. And in this next phase of AmeriCorps program development, programs need to provide details on the exact tasks and nature of the member service in the required member service agreement and position description. Those 2 tools are critical, as you all know, the member service agreement and the position description. These 2 program management tools will show members exactly how they will be successful and make a difference in their communities. Then we move to implementation, and in this third phase of AmeriCorps program development, programs need to equip their members with the necessary skills and knowledge to be successful. And this is done through member orientation and service training. So now we're going to take a look at CNCS requirements and expectations for member development, and Beth is going to continue on with that.
Thanks, Tova. So what are the member training requirements? CNCS language combines orientation and training, but for the purposes today, we're going to separate them out as we discuss all of the aspects of member development. In the 2018 AmeriCorps grant terms and conditions, the CNCS requires a member orientation, training on prohibited activities, and it also outlines a limit on the number of allowable hours, which translates how many hours an AmeriCorps member in a program may spend in education and training activities. And the answer to that is no more than 20% of the aggregate of all AmeriCorps member service hours in your program, as reflected in the member enrollments in the National Service Trust, may be spent in education and training activities. Capacity building activities and direct service activities do not count towards the 20% cap on education and training activities. In addition, guidance on member orientation and training is infused throughout CNCS guidance for AmeriCorps grantees. This includes from the annual notice of funding opportunity to the regulations. All of this reflects our overall goal for member orientation and training, which is to equip AmeriCorps members with the necessary skills and knowledge to successfully complete their terms of service. Keep in mind that the CNCS rules, regulations, grant terms, and conditions, and the policy frequently asked questions, or FAQs, are where we lay out the minimum requirements. Commissions and programs always have the opportunity to provide additional trainings above and beyond the CNCS minimum requirements. If you need a refresher on where to find the requirements, we recommend that you visit the Managing AmeriCorps Grants webpage on the nationalservice.gov. So let's move on to the specifics of member development. In preparing members for service, it's important to look at the three areas on the slide: orientation, service training, ongoing training, and professional development. And no matter the program design, all members need these three areas of development. And let's take a minute to explore each component. Orientation, or the introduction to AmeriCorps member service, prepares the participants for his or her relationship to what we like to call the AmeriWorld. Orientation is the first step in cultivating a positive working relationship with AmeriCorps members. A thorough orientation can help reduce members' anxiety about their new service role, and it can help establish positive expectations for performance and communication that will last throughout the service term. Orientation forms a solid sense of how AmeriCorps programs will function and how the AmeriCorps member fits into AmeriWorld. Specifically, orientation helps to define why a member should be serving in a particular program and in AmeriCorps, and it also helps define the structure of the program and how members see how she or he will be serving, and it also demonstrates how she will fit into the program and into AmeriCorps in general. Some examples of orientation topics are listed on the slide. The history of national service, which includes how national service has evolved over time and what it means today. Prohibited activities, which includes members and volunteers that members recruit and or manage. And I'd like to repeat that prohibited activities training should include the prohibited activities of members and the volunteers that members recruit and or manage. The member service agreement should be reviewed also with members during orientation so that they understand all aspects of the AmeriCorps program, expectations, and benefits. The benefits can include, or would include, living allowance, education award, health care, or child care. Other areas to review include the grievance procedure, reasonable accommodation, and drug-free workplace and non-discrimination information. The position description of the member service should also be reviewed so that members understand their roles and expectations at the service site. Members will also need to understand that they are AmeriCorps members, so AmeriCorps identification is also an important aspect to discuss during orientation. Staff and community members, where members are serving, will need to know that these individuals are AmeriCorps members. Also, as a reminder that something that everyone has committed to as a part of their awarded grant is AmeriCorps identity and co-branding. So it's important for members to understand that being a part of AmeriCorps includes wearing their logos every day, being able to create and deliver elevator speeches, and that also the organization proudly displays the AmeriCorps logo on its website and in its offices. And lastly, time and attendance. It's important to train members to know when to complete their timesheets, who signs their timesheets, and differentiating between their service, training, and fundraising.
Hey, Beth, we have a question in chat.
Okay.
Is it okay for me to?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, there's a question just from Mary asking to state the limit on the number of training hours for members, again, more slowly, because I think we didn't have that written on the slide.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah. So let me just
hang on 1 second. We'll go back. I don't think there was anything written on the slide about it.
It is. It's 20% of the aggregated AmeriCorps members, total members in your organization. No more than 20% of the aggregate of all AmeriCorps member service hours in your program.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I didn't want that to be hanging out there.
Yep.
Member training.
Okay. Okay. So now that we've gone over what should be included in member orientation, I want to move on to member training and the introduction to service-specific skills and activities. And a thorough orientation is absolutely necessary for all AmeriCorps members, no matter the program type or design, but also service-specific trainings to the program and the interventions that the members will be implementing are also critical. So as a training program puts together, the program needs, the member needs, the skills, and the knowledge necessary in order for the member to succeed are all important. Training prepares the member to understand the population to be served, to learn the curriculum or the intervention to be implemented, and know the expectations and responsibilities of his or her service. And another way of looking at the member training program design is by examining the connection between the duties the members will be required to perform and the qualifications that applicants will need to have in order to enroll in the program. The training program must include specific guidance and skills training to prepare members for their assigned duties, if those skills are not required before the members start their program. The timing, topics, methods, and training staff of AmeriCorps training programs will vary across the network. And no matter what the program design is or where the AmeriCorps members serve, AmeriCorps programs must ensure that the training program includes sufficient opportunities to build the skills necessary to provide the program's intervention. This is an area where we see programs struggle with, particularly those programs that are new and designing their training programs from scratch. Training on programs intervention is an absolutely critical point in setting members up to be successful. Some examples of service training topics vary from program to program. So here's a list that we put together that could help you in trying to determine which training topics would fit your program. So for instance, member safety. This could be regarding vulnerable populations or how to operate power tools or conducting home visits. Member wellness would be connecting to other members serving, managing stress, or managing service expectations. And data collection includes expectations of data collection, timelines, how to use the data collection tools, and then service-specific trainings on how to identify flora and fauna if it's an environmental program, or how to manage a classroom for an education program, or how to conduct an energy audit. This list, of course, is not exhaustive, and of course, programs need to include trainings that will prepare their members for successful service. So another part of member training is ongoing training and professional development, or continued member development. And as the program moves through the service year, additional training opportunities are a way to allow members to strengthen the knowledge and skills that they've already gained in specific service areas, learning new skills, and possibly even earning certifications or licenses, and also learning to translate their service experience into future employment opportunities. Some examples of ongoing training topics could include service-specific training, those that continue throughout the year as webinars, discussions, or best practices. Professional development, which is specific to the service that the members are engaged in. These could be certifications or licenses, as I mentioned before. Opportunities for continued learning and ongoing throughout the service year. An example would be inviting a guest speaker relative to the member service or participating in a webinar and or conference. Life after AmeriCorps would include learning resume building, interviewing practices, and also applying learned skills to future opportunities. And other ongoing opportunities could be refresher trainings on prohibited activities or other topics that are relative to the member service interventions. So now that we've gone through the different components of member development, I'd like to hear, or we would like to hear from all of you out in the field on what does your member training look like. And we'd like for you to take a few minutes to answer these questions in the chat box. What are your training topics? What activities do you include? And of course, we give examples of lectures, role plays, scavenger hunts, etc. And who leads the training program? And who provides the training? Okay, so everyone, just to repeat, what we are asking for you to do is to throw out a couple of answers to the discussion questions that we've provided on the slide about the training topics you provide. Be sure to use the chat box. What activities do you include in your training program, and who is leading the training program or providing trainings? Okay, so it looks like we're getting some interesting information over the chat box. We see an ambassador training. We are seeing that the program director, manager, and other guests who visit from the headquarters in Birmingham. That must be the folks who do the trainings. Leading the trainings is a mix of national and regional staff. Online TED Talks, webinars for members that are applicable, resume building, networking, do what you love, love what you do. We do some role playing, dot voting, webinars. Topics include history of AmeriCorps, tutoring practices, prohibited activities. We like that. What is national service, the nuts and bolts, elevator speeches. Barb, you're including all the right pieces. Classroom management, reading strategies, engaging local professionals who donate their time to for certificate level training when available. That's wonderful. We did have a question that came up. I think that Joan had asked about who is responsible for training and who are responsible for training members, and that really varies across programs, and it just depends on what the intervention is. Sometimes it is someone from the community who comes in to train the members. Sometimes it could be the AmeriCorps staff themselves or the program staff themselves, or if they have a specific intervention that is an evidence-based program, that someone from that particular organization would come in and train the members on how to implement that intervention.
Yeah, and if I could just add, if there will be some decentralization to your trainings, you just want to ensure that through your regular oversight and monitoring of the sites and or subgrantees, that you're ensuring those trainings are taking place in one way or another if they're out of your direct realm.
Right. So we're still getting a lot of really good information. We really appreciate you guys responding to this. See that there's a training curriculum that includes history of AmeriCorps and youth build, team building and leadership development, someone who implements games and role plays and tours. So thank you all very much.
Yep.
Okay, Joan, I see that you asked something about specific to a service site. So yes, if there is something service site specific, then sure, the staff at that service site or the service site supervisor may be the one who leads that specific training. So good question, thank you. So now we've got one more little interactive fun piece here, and we are going to take a quick poll. And so the first poll is, do your members come together in person for training or orientation, or is it, as Tova just referenced, decentralized and scattered across the country or across sites? And do you use webinars, conference calls, or other remote tools to implement your orientation and trainings? And votes are coming in.
Hopefully you can see the results on the screen. It should be visible to everyone.
50-50. All right. So it looks like a little more than half of you do use webinars, conference calls, and other remote tools, which is very exciting. And then those 82% or a little bit higher do come together for in-person trainings. So great. Thank you so much. Now that we have reviewed everything that's required by CNCS and provided you with some examples for orientation and trainings, we are now going to hear from some of your peers, and I'm going to turn that over to Tova.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah, we're super excited and really lucky to have two national programs, representatives from two national programs who are willing to share their experiences in this area with all of us. So the way this will work is that I will introduce representatives from each program, and then they're going to speak, and then we will hold questions until the end unless you want to type something in the chat box, and please feel free to do that at any time. So first, I'm really pleased to introduce Brandy Jimenez from Citizen Schools Incorporated. Brandy is the Director of National Service at Citizen Schools and is known around the office as Captain AmeriCorps. It's pretty cool. Brandy oversees all of Citizen Schools' AmeriCorps grants, national, state, and VISTA, and works closely with senior and regional leadership to ensure a best-in-class experience for the members. Brandy is a two-time AmeriCorps alumna. She served in both the American National Civilian Community Corps, otherwise known as NCCC, and as an AmeriCorps VISTA with the Yakima County Veterans Program in Washington State. Along with Brandy from Citizen Schools, I'm also really pleased to introduce Adam Maurer, the CEO with Positively Partners. And Adam has a very interesting background as well. He started his career during the e-commerce boom in the late 90s and basically led human resources and talented initiatives for multinational corporations for many years, working in the United Kingdom and European Union. Upon his return to the U.S. in 2009, he focused on advanced HR, recruitment, selection, and employment engagement practices for schools, nonprofits, and social enterprises. Adam also served as the head of talent for National Heritage Academies and as the Chief Talent Officer for Citizen Schools. So I'd like to welcome Brandy and Adam and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. This is Adam. I'm going to start off, and then Brandy is going to have the opportunity to share with you a lot about the practices we've been doing at Citizen Schools. Hopefully you can get up that first slide that basically talks about Citizen Schools' timeline, because we have been a long-term partner with AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps has been kind of a foundation partner of our organization since 2002. The organization founded in 1995 to promote ed reform and specifically to think about how to provide extended learning time for middle school students and give them hands-on learning opportunities. So AmeriCorps members come in and work side by side with teachers to help them integrate members of the community into the classroom and help give middle school students both more time and time that's sort of hands-on in ways that accentuates their learning content. Citizen Schools, like so many organizations within the ed reform space, has been on quite a journey. First, like TFA and other partners, getting a lot of national funding and national attention. Within the last few years, funding has been more local, and our attention has turned more regional, and the organization has moved from 7 regions to now serve 3 regions, and to do those with more local focus. And that's required us to change the way that we train and develop our AmeriCorps members and induct them. And so that's really what we're going to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about today, is kind of how we made that transition from a centralized approach, which was really exciting because we had close to 300 members at one point come together in a big summer institute. Everyone said the pledge together, and it was incredibly inspiring, in terms of kind of bringing together the ideas of national service with the mission of the organization. But really a combination of finance and this need to focus locally and harness kind of the passion of some of the local leadership has caused us to take a more regional approach. And so, Brandy, if you want to talk a little bit about what kind of we found in terms of pros and cons as we've moved from this more national centralized approach to a more regional one.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam, and thanks everybody for having us and allowing us a couple of minutes to share out. Some of the regional training benefits that we found so far kind of has a central theme, if you read through these bullet points, is really rooted in having our regions be able to customize their training based on what the campuses are needing, what our members are needing at the regional level, and what our community is needing. And so we've been able to keep this in mind, we've been able to have and build deeper connections for our members with their campuses, with their communities, and with their regions. As Adam mentioned, we are a national program but operate in these three different regions. And with most of us who deal with education, we know that each campus, let alone each region, has their own needs and their own kind of culture. And so being able to regionalize trainings have really been able to increase the opportunity to make the trainings more relevant to what the community needs. And when I say community, it's really everybody, not just like our offices in that region, but the campuses that we serve, the students that we serve, and the members that we serve in those regions. And it's also been able to ensure that our members and our organization is fully integrated into those communities. And so it's really, you've heard me say community in each one of these, and so that's what a regional training really allows us to do, and has the regions be able to have much more involvement in that customization. And one other thing that's pretty obvious, it's been less expensive. I don't want to say it's been more cost effective, but as it is now year 2 of this regionalized training, without having to pay for lodging and meals and transportation to bring everybody to Boston, we are actually able to reallocate those funds and save on some of those expenses. So it has been so far a little less expensive. So those are the benefits, but to chat a little bit about what some of the trainings that, some of the challenges that we've seen. And if I had to sum it up in a couple of words, it would be more internal communications. With everything being more decentralized, we as an organization have had to step up and really hone in those internal communications, especially around compliance, specifically around AmeriCorps compliance. I know Adam spoke earlier about how foundational and necessary our partnership with AmeriCorps is, and so we definitely want to maintain that continuity with messaging out compliance, like prohibited activities, gear expectations, and things like that. And it's also been a challenge when you make something a little bit more regionalized. It's how do we build up that connection to our national organization, the national movement that is AmeriCorps. So, for example, when we were centralized, we had everybody come to Boston. We had around 200 people in the room when they took their AmeriCorps pledge, versus now when they're in the regional office, it's about 50 people. So everybody knows the energy that comes with more AmeriCorps members and the more people in a room. And so that's been a challenge of us trying to navigate those waters so they can still feel connected and fully understand their impact and their connection to this movement. Another challenge is maintaining the continuity and the excellence of the program. And it's all based around internal communications. Everything was housed in the central office, so specifically with our AmeriCorps compliance, with our AmeriCorps expectations, it all came through one channel and messaged out in a singular voice, and our members went to our regions already having this knowledge. And so the difference is our regions are the ones that have to message that out, and so we have to be the ones that making sure that they're have the tools and the resources and the information that they are needing to be able to message out that information correctly, accurately, and efficiently. And I think we're going to hand it back over to Adam to talk about, we talked about some of the solutions, some of the challenges, but he's going to mention some of the solutions that we're currently working on and working through.
Yeah, so we've really tried to harness this regional energy, and even in our recruitment of AmeriCorps members, we've found that kind of really highlighting local impact and opportunity to think about the assets that exist in the local community are really strong draws for folks that want to do this work. And this is very differentiated from 5 or 6 years ago when I was recruiting AmeriCorps teaching fellows for Citizen Schools. It was all about sort of being a national change agent, and the fact that through your efforts education was going to change as a whole. I think today we're finding that the members that we're recruiting are very interested in changing the lives of the students that they intersect with kind of day to day, and kind of working to kind of marshal existing resources that are within the community. And so that lends itself very well, to this this localized strategy, but it really does mean empowering local stewards, finding folks within each region that are, not just thinking about delivering content, but, are as focused, on things like AmeriCorps compliance. That's kind of just as relevant. I have lost our slide here. Is that going to come back up?
Yeah. Hey, Adam, it's Barbara. I'm sorry. We're having a little Adobe Connect visual challenge. It should be back up in just a minute.
Okay, no worries. So finding those local stewards are really important because those are the advocates that not just deliver the content but continue to reinforce it on a day-to-day basis. We've also had to think really carefully about curating content. What is the content that needs to be kind of standardized across the network? Things that we need everyone to hear and everyone to hear with the same sort of messaging. Those could be things, like our uniform requirements and prohibitive activities, the kind of supports that are available, but again, sort of ways to think about the service mindset and the growth mindset that is so integral, into kind of the program that we're seeking together. And Brandy, without the slide up here, remind me of the third, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and so curate regular check-ins and accountability partners.
Oh, and accountability partners is just about those, like, that opportunity for check-in. So, we found that we've had to develop new practices, around attendance and participation, kind of how do we know that people are getting the content, and how do we kind of create monitoring and quality checks. So it's meant that we have to have more people come out to the field to check on this. And so what's really interesting is, we didn't do this by design. It wasn't necessarily we had this national approach and all of a sudden wanted to go regional. I think that there were some things that led us in that direction and reasons to take advantage of it, but it really was the need to kind of save money, not bring everybody to Boston, which was a program that I think was going very, very well. The reason I think Brandy said it might not be cost effective, even though it's cheaper, is that I think we have, seen, some deficit and some need to grow around instructional practice, and larger connection to the mission. And so this year we're really, looking to continue to, to learn from that and to find the balance between the regional and the national. So, Brandy, if you want to take us home with some of those key mindset and values that we're definitely focusing on in the curated content.
Yeah, for sure. And these are all in the slide deck, and I believe everybody has access to it, but while it's in upload progress, some of the key things that are really found, although we are operating and every region is putting on their own trainings, we came together and really build a foundation on a couple of key themes for all of our training, and how that's delivered is curated by our regions. But some of those would be service-minded, strengths-driven, with a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, with reflection and growth-oriented activities built in, at the same time building those high-quality connections and inclusive communities for learning, not only for our members but for the students that we are impacting, and making sure that our program is student-centered, and we're putting it out with quality, with personalized instructional coaching. Excuse me. But yeah, no, those are the key themes, and just again another way that we really decided to move forward with, making sure that we're grounded, because we still have to move forward as one organization, but we can still stay grounded in these key themes for our trainings. Adam, did I miss anything? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, no. I mean, these are the key things that we know through, positive psychology and studies of employee engagement that are really the drivers to keeping people happy and focused on the work. And so, being service-minded and sort of keeping part of the community and very growth-oriented are things that help people to learn through the challenge of the work. And help us to build at least stronger local kind of regional community, and then find opportunity for that interconnection through the larger touch points that we can create from time to time. And Brandy, as Captain AmeriCorps, has really looked to do that as much as possible, through phone and webinar and other kinds of events, celebrating, AmeriCorps Week, making sure everyone has cupcakes and posters and that sort of stuff. So that helps be the glue to be part of one community, even though we can't launch the service experience as a single community any longer.
Yeah, thanks, Adam, and thanks again, you guys. But I think that wraps it up for us.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandy and Adam, for sharing your regional training structure with all of us. I know I definitely took away some lessons from that, and I think it was really useful and valuable for everyone to hear. I think whether folks may be considering a regional training structure, if they're national, it can also be applicable. A lot of what you talked about could be applicable to single state programs if they want to regionally within the state work with trainings in that way. I really liked how you talked about harnessing regional energy. That phrase got me a little bit excited. That's very cool. So thank you very much. And if there are any questions for the both of you, we'll take them at the Q&A once we're finished with the speakers. So now, it's my pleasure to introduce Virgil Looney with Grid Alternatives. And Virgil manages Grid's nationwide Solar Corps AmeriCorps program, where members gain valuable experience in the solar and nonprofit industries to help launch their renewable energy careers, while making significant contributions to Grid and the communities Grid serves. Virgil has a very diverse, esteemed background, and one of the roles he had prior to what he's doing now is that he was a Bonner Scholar with Keys Service Corps AmeriCorps. So Virgil, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you.
Hi everybody. Thanks for having me and letting me join and share a little bit about Grid and our AmeriCorps program. And it was really exciting to hear from the last speakers and to also see what you all were chatting in, because it sounds like you all already have lots of great ideas and lots of great things in place. And so I think to start, what I'm going to do is just share a little bit of background on Grid, and then our history with AmeriCorps, and then just go into some of the details to the orientation and trainings that we provide for our AmeriCorps members. So Grid Alternatives is based in Oakland, California, and is a nonprofit solar company. So it's a pretty interesting, unique nonprofit. We provide solar services to lower income families. We're based in Oakland with a presence with offices across the state of California that serve every county in California, and then we also have an office that serves the state of Colorado, and then an office in Washington, D.C. We also have an international program that has done work in Mexico, Nepal, and Nicaragua. And similar to the previous speakers, we have a long history with CNCS. Grid has received funding from CNCS from the state of California that began about 10 years ago. And then in 2014, we really wanted to grow in a number of ways, and we were really excited about adding and growing the kind of service year opportunities with Grid, because we were seeing from volunteers that had been working with us just the need and the desire for more job training within solar, because it's a growing field in the U.S. and it's also a really accessible field where you don't need a traditional academic background to gain access to it. And so that really got Grid's attention, especially with our commitment to equity and inclusion work. And so in 2014, we applied for a National Direct Grant, which was awarded in 2015. And so from 2015 until now, we've been the recipient for a National Direct Grant, and we have 40 AmeriCorps members placed with us every year. So we're on the smaller side in terms of programs. And then the kind of the structure for it is similar, that we have the offices where our members are placed are these regional grid offices across the country, but the majority are in California. So we have every year we have 40 AmeriCorps members. We're in the process of doing kind of final selections for 2018 through 2019. And the majority of our AmeriCorps members, or sorry, all of them, they serve in either construction, outreach, or workforce development. And so they're all very field-based and outward-facing, and our AmeriCorps members really are kind of our frontline staff in a lot of different ways with the communities that we serve. And so are a huge part in executing our mission, which is to provide solar services to all communities and make it accessible for all communities. And so we're getting ready for our fourth larger cohort year of AmeriCorps members, and this is always a stressful time for us, and also just a really exciting time as we get to select the incoming AmeriCorps members. And the way that we kick off the year of service is with an in-person pre-service orientation, and it's hosted in Oakland. And every year it's been a 5-day orientation, and I've been leading the orientations for the last 4 years, and I've had different previous roles in training and education, and so I think I approach it more as coming with like an education or teacher lens rather than sort of like an event management lens. And so my approach for all the trainings that we do is just to have really clear purpose and outcomes, and I keep it. I do that as many for kind of literally like all of the training. So there's purpose and outcomes for the entire 5-day orientation, and then within each one we have purpose and outcomes for the different sessions that we have. And like lots of you already said, we cover lots of the things that you all suggested and are already doing. So just kind of like the history of AmeriCorps, and then GRID's relationship to AmeriCorps, and we go over the prohibited activities. And I think one thing that we found that's been successful in helping people retain to really think about the prohibited activities more is that we go over it as a group and kind of have group conversations and see if there's any initial questions, and then we actually split up into pairs, and then we have people go through each one and teach. The task is to teach someone else what the prohibited activity is. And we found that when people are teaching each other, or when a peer is teaching a peer, they often retain the information a little bit better. And then that's also a time where then the pairs share out to the group, and so that's an easy time for me to see how well they understand the prohibited activities and if there's anything that we need to talk about further. So that's one thing that I found as being really helpful, just in keeping the prohibited activities kind of front and center, and then also making sure that people really are comprehending and understanding. And then another big piece to our member orientation has to do with identifying and trying to prevent as many issues from coming up later on. And for us, the consistent feedback, and I think it's really it's not just about AmeriCorps, and it's not just about GRID, but just most kind of professional workplaces. There's always challenges around communications. And so that ends up being a pretty strong focus point for us throughout our orientation, and we have a couple of different activities throughout the week that all have to do with effective communication styles, and that especially comes up with our AmeriCorps members and managers, and so that's something that we take a lot of time to work on. And with all of our AmeriCorps members, really the one big thing that kind of unites our AmeriCorps members is their commitment to service, and so we try to tap into that commitment as much as possible so that it's kind of front and center for the member to come back to, especially when they're having a tough day. And so we have an activity that's called Mapping Your Year that helps members identify the kind of the commitment and goals that they're working towards during their year of service, and then breaking it down into actionable steps and then spacing it out over the course of 12 months. So to literally be a guide and kind of a roadmap. And then that's been really helpful for me as I check in with AmeriCorps members to really say, to be able to go over this with them and say, where are you in this process? What's causing delays, if there are delays, or what are the barriers? And it's something to also share with managers just so that they're aware as to the kind of goals that people are working towards. And so that's an activity that's been really helpful. And then another activity that we always do during our member orientation is one that's just a commitment activity. And we normally do this on the last day, and this has to do with everyone writes down a couple different commitments they have for their year of service, and then we spread them out on tables around the room, and then everyone goes around and then picks a commitment that another person wrote and that resonates with them, and that helps us really build stronger relationships between our AmeriCorps members, and then also I think that's helped them build greater connections to this kind of support network of their fellow AmeriCorps members, so that they know that they have support within this group and other people who are working towards similar goals. And when we get feedback after orientation, that's an activity that comes up a lot from by our AmeriCorps members, saying it was especially kind of powerful and helpful. And so in addition to our week-long member orientation, we do a mid-year retreat that's 2 days, that's also in person. And so that's a really helpful way to follow along with additional trainings that's really focused on life after AmeriCorps. And one of the key activities that we do during this retreat, which is about halfway through the year, is a similar activity to the commitment activity, but instead it's all about failures. And so that's when people write down a few ways in which they feel that they failed over the first couple of months, and then we do a similar thing where you go around and you find a failure that somebody else wrote down and that resonates with you, and then that again helps us build this community of trust and understanding that everyone has challenges, we all make mistakes, and there's people who have literally made the exact same mistakes as you have in the room, and that makes people feel comfortable and safe, and that sets up the space pretty well for us. And so those are our two kind of big in-person events, and I mean, cost is always a concern because we have our AmeriCorps members are all spread out, and so far it hasn't been so expensive that we've had to kind of revamp it or eliminate these in-person events. But we have looked at these kind of similar regional models because, especially in California, we have offices located in Southern California, and then inland, and then also in Northern California. And some of our offices, some of our regional offices have kind of co-hosted training events with some of the neighboring offices, and that's been for everyone, not just for the AmeriCorps members. And so we're starting to look at that as a more cost-effective approach to doing more periodic trainings throughout the year. And so far those seem to be going well, and then that's something that I've looked at doing just with AmeriCorps members, and we haven't experimented with it yet, but that's something that we've definitely talked about. And then throughout the year, in addition to the two in-person trainings that I mentioned, we host a number of different webinars, and internally at GRID we have a system called Skype for Business that makes it pretty easy to communicate between different locations. And what I normally do is I reach out to our AmeriCorps members and their managers and just ask people for feedback about things that they want to learn more about or areas that they feel that they need more training. And there's always a handful of things that we put together at the beginning of every AmeriCorps year because they just come up pretty regularly as things that people need support with. And so some examples of that is just doing a computer literacy training, and we have a lot of field-based staff that might not have traditional education backgrounds where they've used a lot of computers before. So that's something that has been really important for us to provide. And then we also do some kind of basic financial training for people. And then we have a couple of sessions just on professional behavior, which looks at, again, it's like the emphasis of that one is largely around communication and different styles of communication, because we often have AmeriCorps members that haven't had to use email regularly, and so there's a lot of questions about, even just like a simple question about how to write a professional email and examples of what's appropriate and what's not. And so those are some things that are pretty standard at the beginning of every year. And then when I ask for input, there's generally pretty similar trends. And so one is that people always want to work on public speaking. They want to work on giving and receiving effective feedback. People want to learn about or want to practice kind of their personal elevator pitch. And another one that's been popular is a session that's called Learning to Fail. And so these are sessions that we've all done, that I've led remotely just over Skype for Business. And they, there's always challenges when you're doing these kind of remote presentations, but so far these seem to be received well, and they help. They help both our managers and then also our AmeriCorps members. So those are just a couple kind of examples and ways that we approach it. That's everything that I can think of right now. But I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any more kind of specific examples on like exercises or different sessions that we provide.
Thank you so much, Virgil, and thank you very much to our guest speakers for sharing a really nice variety of approaches to member orientation and training. We really thank you and value your experience, and thanks again for sharing with us. So right now what we're going to do is take questions. So what questions do folks have for our guest speakers and or for us here at CNCS? We'll open up the lines as well as monitor the chat. Let me retract that. We're actually going to just take questions via the chat function. We're not going to open up the lines. So we know everyone is good at the chat function because there is an absolute wealth of experience and activities and different types of trainings and who does the trainings in the chat box. I'd actually recommend everyone, if you haven't already, to scroll and look through and try to keep for your own use and ideas for your own trainings. But for now, yeah, what questions do we have for our speakers or any questions in general? Please use the chat box.
Well, while folks are typing in, this is Barbara. I just wanted to go back to a question that was chatted in a little while ago. I think it was Brandy that asked the question about where you can find the requirements for the AmeriCorps gear. Definitely in your grant terms and conditions, there's a specific section on identity and the logo and the AmeriCorps gear. So I just wanted to catch that question that came up earlier.
All right. I think questions are going to start rolling in. Yeah, so let's pose this question to our speakers first. We have a question. We have very little budget for training. Do you have any thoughts about cost-effective trainings? Let me pass that over to either Brandy, Adam, or Virgil first.
Sure, I can jump in. This is Virgil. I'm always amazed when I reach out to coworkers and also just people in my personal network who are interested in providing training and are interested in having and practicing even just with public speaking. And I found that when I reach out to people within GRID, I get volunteers of folks who say they have something that they want to offer. And often the barrier that I find is just in the coordination and doing the logistics and behind-the-scenes work to get things set up. And if I do all of that if I do that part for my coworkers and just literally make it so that they have to show up and do their thing, they love it. And I have to build in a couple extra things to make sure that people are really going to show up and have prepared effectively and all of that. But I really try to pull internally as much as possible, and if I'm willing to do the legwork for someone so that they don't have to manage the logistics of like sending out invitations and sending out reminders and the call-in number and all of that, then I'm much more likely to get people to sign up and share their talents.
Yeah, definitely. This is Brandy. I definitely echo Virgil's suggestions for sure. In another way that we cut some of our costs from central to regional, obviously the travel and lodging, but with our meeting spaces, we lean a lot on those community resources or those other AmeriCorps programs that may have more spaces, or service programs that may have available spaces that are friends of nonprofits that may offer a discount or free space. And then another is donate. We haven't done this at Citizen Schools. I've done it at other other nonprofits that I've worked at, but it takes a lot of planning. It's a bigger list, but if you go up to a restaurant and you just say, hey, this is our program, this is our impact, this is our mission, they're probably more inclined to give you discounted food, or even maybe like an in-kind donation for you know, some type of like recognition for them as well. I hope that's helpful in some way.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you both for sharing those ideas. And just to add, I think in addition to, which was a great idea, looking internally within your organization for folks who could help out with trainings, also look to your external professional network as well. For anyone who may be appropriate in whatever the area of training is that you're looking for to come speak, they may provide a discount or maybe not charge anything at all. So that's always a useful tip as well. Thank you so much. Virgil, I believe we have a question for you. Folks would love to hear more about the Learning to Fail training.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this one's really fun. Always a really popular one. I learned about this through someone named Scott Sherman, who runs an organization called the Transformative Action Institute. And so they do a lot of train-the-trainer models, and so I've attended some of these events to learn more from them. And one session that I learned from them is called Learning to Fail, and the kind of premise behind the Learning to Fail is that we have to fail in order to succeed. So the example is any inventor, they failed 500 times before they invented the thing that finally works. And really the only way to kind of move forward with success in a big way is by being comfortable having failures, and also just acknowledging that we all fail plenty of times and we make tons of mistakes, and that's just kind of how things go. And so there's a whole kind of like module behind it, but the opening challenge, and it's better if you have it. It's a good thing to introduce at an event where you can revisit it the next day, or if you have a follow along meeting within the next week. Because one of the first challenges is to go out and try to fail as many times as possible, and it's really fun, and people go and do really funny things with their friends and coworkers, and you have the request is to document it so then you can share with others. And what's really shocking is that people often find it difficult to fail. And so I've seen people who will like go into a restaurant and say, "Can I have a free meal?" And it's amazing like how many places actually will do that. We did a training in New York City where people went out to Times Square and did a whole big thing about like hugging people and trying to seeing if people wanted to have a hug, and it was amazing that it was something like 95% of people wanted to have a hug. And so it also, that's kind of a helpful kind of team building activity too, because that's something that people normally do with a group of people. And kind of the next piece to it is how people make their own luck. And really the only way that you make your own luck is by taking risks and putting yourself out there a little bit. And by doing that, you're making yourself more available for things to happen. But in order to take risks, you have to be comfortable with failing sometimes. But there's a ton of really exciting kind of the science behind it as well, about how human brains think about failure and think about risk. That would take a long time to talk about. But I think overall, if you want to learn more, the place to go to be the Transformative Action Institute.
Great, thank you, Virgil. Wonderful. Do we have any other questions? We don't have anything else coming in right now in the chat box, but we'll give it a minute. Feel free to pose any questions to our speakers or to us. All right, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Oh, wait, maybe we do.
No. Okay.
All right, so we are going to wrap up. Thank you again to everyone for participating in the webinar. And thank you to our guest speakers. And in wrapping up, there are more resources at nationalservice.gov. As you know, you can find a plethora of useful information and resources there, such as links to notice of funding opportunities, branding and marketing materials, program fact sheets, logos, performance measurement instructions, everything you would ever want. You can find at nationalservice.gov. Also, just for you to be aware, the next webinar will be on the topic of AmeriCorps member and site monitoring and reporting requirements, and it will take place on August 23rd from 3 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So with that, we just want to thank you again, and thank you for your participation in today's webinar. Have a wonderful rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.